Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Well, here we are, election week, and by this time tomorrow, folks will be, I would guess the final half, maybe 55% of the American public that's going to vote in the 2024 presidential election will have done so. We have had enormous early voting turnout in the weeks leading up to tomorrow's election. And there are folks who are doing their best, polling-wise and otherwise, to try and give us a sense of where this election is going to go. And at the end of the day, all of the polling that comes out here in the last minute says it's a dead heat. Well, great. I'm sort of hoping not. I go through bad days, good days, actually bad hours, good hours even. It can change from minute to minute, really, on where my gut tells me we will point this nation directionally with tomorrow's results, if we get results tomorrow night. The thing that really just sort of agitates me the most, and by the way, Americans, we're not the only ones dealing with these anxieties. I told you a couple weeks ago when I was canvassing in South Carolina for a congressional candidate, my friend Mal Hyman, I was on the campus of Coastal Carolina University, and there were families visiting from Germany, touring the school, and one walked up to me, noticed I was handing out some cards for the candidate, and were just exasperated. How can it be this close? What we are pulling for Kamala, we hope for the... I get it. The lady who came up to us at a meet and greet at a bar and grill in Myrtle Beach from Ireland, lived there for a few years, and she's, I can't believe it's this close. What's happening? America, what are you doing? I get it. We're all feeling the same thing. Well, half of the country feeling the same thing. We're bewildered by this. And maybe it will be a close call, and maybe it won't. I want to say one day last week, I brought up this blog from the folks at Vantage Data House. The headline was, "The Blowout No One Sees Coming." And I'll give you a quick little summation of what they wrote in the introduction. Pollsters are expected to be fortune tellers. We're often asked, what's going to happen in the election? Credible pollsters' predictions are grounded in reliable data and an understanding of voting behavior, not wishful thinking or reinforcing currently held perceptions. The current pervading narrative about the U.S. presidential race is that it's tight, too close to call. The reality is this race is breaking for the Harris-Walz ticket, they write. Vantage has been tracking 7 swing states daily since August. Until recently, the race consistently appeared as a toss-up. Just a few days ago, the numbers started to shift. It's clear the momentum is moving away from Trump. Here's how our nightly tracking data, 1,200 interviews per state, stacks up against what 538 and Real Clear Politics are reporting in their campaign. And when you look at the Vantage DH numbers, you see all of them, save for Arizona, breaking for Kamala Harris. And even with their Arizona numbers, you see Trump's advantage dwindling down to 1 percentage point within the margin of error. I'll include this analysis in today's show notes at ronshowatl.com. I want to say I did that before. Their confidence level, by the way, 95%. We heard all the breathless reporting over the weekend of the Iowa poll, the Ann Seltzer Iowa poll. Oh my gosh, it shows that Kamala Harris leads Donald Trump in Iowa, of all places, 47 to 44%, of course, within the margin of error. I don't know what to make of that. I don't know that means, we're going to Tuesday night see states like Iowa flip for Kamala Harris. I will say this, however, again, having lived in South Carolina for 11 years, a similarly, lower populated state with not a tight margin, but it's a 55-45 kind of state. That's not blowout territory, right? It's not all that different than Georgia, where like the right candidate v. the wrong candidate can really upend party affiliation. I've been, volunteering for the most part for a congressional candidate against an incumbent who is a MAGA Republican who hasn't really run. He's so convinced, and maybe he's right, he's so convinced that R plus 11 margin that he's got to play with, he can take his campaign money and donate it to other PACs and help out other candidates. He's not even really trying to win this race. And maybe he won't need to, but maybe we actually shock the world. And maybe if the state Democratic Party in South Carolina had their ish together and were actually helping flip a congressional seat, a winnable congressional seat. It is a winnable congressional seat, especially with the right candidate, and we got the right candidate. Things can happen. But I guess back to the Iowa thing. What I expect is, I don't expect Iowa to flip for Kamala Harris. I mean, if it happens, okay, we saw it in the tea leaves. But I do expect that there's going to be some tighter outcomes in much of the country. And I think that means Democrats can flip the House. The down ballot races would really be affected, right? Kansas is a purpley red state. It's not flat out red. Anyway, folks are breathless after the Ann Seltzer, poll that came out about Iowa. And I don't know what to make. Andrew Heaton, local Democratic strategist, will be on to discuss this a little bit later. Among other things, we'll do a little horse race picking. Here's my thing. I'm just wondering, when is MAGA going to get mad at being lied to? They're lied to so damn much. Not just by that guy, but by that guy and the operatives that seek to take advantage because of the popularity of that guy. When are they going to get mad about this? Over the weekend here in Georgia, there has been this blow up about county elections offices being opened to let folks drop in their absentee ballots, as state law allows. How do I know this? Well, a judge said so. Because, first of all, you had the Fulton County GOP, then the state GOP, now the RNC have all swooped in to file lawsuits against 7 Georgia counties. By the way, those aren't all the Georgia counties that opened over the weekend to allow an absentee ballot. Those are just the 7 blue Georgia counties. Isn't that interesting that they only chose those 7 counties to file a lawsuit against? I find that interesting. So, as was allowed, Fulton County was one of the first that decided, you know what, we're going to open up our offices over the weekend so folks can drop in these absentee ballots because they don't trust the Postal Service. Thank you, Louis DeJoy, Trump nominee. Ashley Ahn and David Wickert at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporting, Republicans on Sunday broadened their attack on counties accepting absentee ballots over the weekend, even though a judge has ruled the practice is perfectly legal. Fulton and other Georgia counties opened government offices Saturday and Sunday to accept absentee ballots ahead of Tuesday's election in practice, authorized by Georgia law. On Saturday, Fulton Superior Court Judge Kevin Farmer rejected a GOP lawsuit that sought to prevent the practice. But Republicans filed a second lawsuit Sunday against 7 counties seeking to invalidate the practice, and Republicans kept up a steady stream of attacks on social media and elsewhere over the weekend, suggesting something illegal was afoot. In comments Sunday, State Senator Brandon Beach, Republican of Alpharetta, implied the decision to accept ballots over the weekend was an improper extension of early in-person voting, which ended Friday. He said, I think the 19 days of early voting we had went off without a problem. The voters were starting to gain confidence back in the process. Now what this has done, these shenanigans have instilled doubt in the credibility in the election process. No, actually, it's you're reacting to what's perfectly legal that's creating the doubt, Brandon. Max Pflugerth, spokesperson for the liberal voting rights group Fair Fight, said supporters of Republican Donald Trump are spreading false claims and disinformation with the goal of undermining confidence in our elections. The Trump ally plan is clear. Spread false claims about election fraud, use those false claims to anger their followers, and then encourage them to go cause chaos at election offices. Elections are decided by voters making a choice, not election deniers using false claims to sow chaos. Their plan will fail. As the article points out, state law allows absentee ballots to be returned to county election offices by mail or in person until 7 p.m. Tuesday, which I believe is after this past weekend when they opened the offices to allow folks to drop in those absentee ballots. It says here, to accept absentee ballots, including government buildings or other buildings used as election day polling places. The article continues, because of problems with the U.S. Postal Service, Fulton County spokesperson Jessica Corbett said people who wanted until the October 25th deadline to request an absentee ballot cannot expect their ballots to be delivered on time. She said opening county offices to accept them this past weekend, makes it convenient for people who work and may not be able to deliver their ballots in person Monday or Tuesday. Hang on, I'm going to point out to you where the GOP, the MAGA nonsense, tugs at these folks like they're puppets and makes them do what they want them to do. Nonetheless, Fulton County's decision led county and state Republican officials to file a lawsuit late Friday. At a hearing early Saturday, they argued voters cannot return their ballots in person between the close of early in-person voting Friday and Election Day. There's nothing in state law that says that, though. In fact, that's exactly what the judge said. Judge Farmer said. Citing state law, Judge Farmer rejected the argument and the Republican request for an injunction against the practice. But on Sunday, the RNC now has stepped in. The Trump family-led Republican National Convention and the Georgia GOP filing another lawsuit in federal court in Savannah. They sought to block Fulton, DeKalb, Cobb, Gwinnett, Athens, Clark, Clayton, and Chatham counties from accepting absentee ballots. All of those blue counties, by the way. The latest lawsuit targets Democratic-leaning counties. I'm so glad the reporter's pointing this out. The latest lawsuit targets Democratic-leaning counties, but not Republican-leaning counties that are also doing it, such as Walton County, that also opened offices this weekend to allow voters to drop off ballots. On Saturday, Fulton initially denied Republicans a chance to observe the locations of accepting absentee ballots. Corbett said that the county clarified the rules and admitted them by mid-morning. Here we go. Bill Baskett, age 69, of Roswell, was one of the public observers who came to monitor the process because of his concerns of voter fraud. I'm checking to see if anyone brings in a pile of absentee ballots because I heard they stuffed absentee ballot boxes with counterfeit ballots last time. Some observers apparently snapped photos of voters going in to drop off their ballots. Irene Muskovitz, there was this lady with 6 or 7 ballots. Under Georgia law, people can deliver ballots for family members. Back to Republican State Senator Brandon Beach. Spent time filming videos for social media at the Sandy Springs office over the weekend. 4 years ago, he was one of several legislators who aided Trump's effort to overturn Democrat Joe Biden's victory in Georgia. On Sunday, he brushed off the Fulton judge's ruling that state law allows accepting ballots over the weekend. The spirit of the law is we have 19 days of early voting, weekend voting, and election voting. Everything should have stopped on Friday, he said. I don't think he's being duped. I think he's part of the duping. But I definitely think Irene and Mr. Baskett, just fish reeled in, flopping in the cooler on the boat. And again, my question is, when do they get mad at the people actually lying to them, actually just feeding them a treasure trove of bullshit? When do they get mad at the people who are duping them? I don't think they ever do. I mean, Fox News has been around for, 4 decades? Conservative talk radio, the end of the fairness doctrine, more than 4 decades ago. It's just a steady stream of lies and disinformation and misinformation, and they keep getting duped. And there are no repercussions for those who do the duping. I mean, except for that one Dominion voting case that Fox paid out hundreds of millions for, right? And a few thousand who are going to serve jail time for January 6th. But when are there going to be honest repercussions for such duping? And I'm not saying it has to be litigious. I'm just saying, when are these folks going to get mad at the right people, the people doing the duping? I don't know. I don't know when the light bulb comes on. Hang tight. Let me take a quick break, and I'll prove more lying, more duping when the Ron Show returns. Again, everything you hear me read or you hear audio from, I cite my sources, baby. RonShowATL.com for the show notes. Watching 60 Minutes last night, and they did a 13 and a half or so minute piece focusing on election integrity, specifically here in the state of Georgia. Gabriel Sterling was on the show, and I have it on good authority. He listens in from time to time. It's because I cite him. Anyway, hi, Gabriel. Good morning. Looked good on TV last night. Did a fantastic job, credible job. But I want to focus in not on Gabriel Sterling's words, but on that of an election integrity expert by the name of David Becker. You see, because while busybody Bill Baskett and Irene Muskovitz believe everything that MAGA tells them about voter fraud and election theft, well, there's what they hear, and then there's reality.
Few people know elections like David Becker. At the Justice Department, he helped enforce voting rights. Later, He led the creation of a voter registration data center that is used today by half the states. Becker is a CBS News election consultant.
One of the things everyone should understand is the claims about election theft and fraud are not driven by the actual policies that exist in the states. They're driven by one factor and one factor only, and that's whether your candidate won. Sadly, tens of millions of Americans have been targeted,
duped,
for this disinformation.
Lied to.
They've been preyed upon by
Lied to.
losing candidates and foreign adversaries. And importantly, they have donated money, because a lot of this is financial. There's a financial incentive for those who've spread the lies, who have raised, let's face it, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars off the lie that our elections aren't to be trusted.
Let's look at some of the conspiracy theories of fraud. We'll take them one at a time. Bogus votes are electronically inserted into tabulation machines.
They're not connected to the internet. They are under strict physical chain of custody. It is really hard to get access to a physical machine and do anything to it. And even if there were some attempt to hack the machine, or probably more likely have some kind of malfunction of the machine, the audits would catch it.
Another of the conspiracy theories is that illegal immigrants are voting by the millions.
Bullshit.
That is 100% false. Every single voter has to give a driver's license number or a social security number, which is matched against files, databases that are held to make sure the voter is who they say they are and they're eligible to vote. And we also know that states who have gone looking for non-citizens voters have found shockingly few even potential non-citizen registrants. Ohio just recently announced that in a period of time of over a decade, it had found 6 possible cases of non-citizens voting.
It was like, 20, stretching back to before 2012 here in the state of Georgia. You do well to alter a city council seat race with that number of votes. But again, stretched out over 2 decades?
But fraud does happen, doesn't it?
It happens very rarely. We know how much fraud in this country happens. We know it's not zero, but it's very, very close to zero.
We're not talking about millions of votes or hundreds of thousands of votes.
No, we're talking about dozens of votes in a big national election. It is, for all intents and purposes, impossible to steal a big national election. We are so decentralized, with almost 10,000 different jurisdictions run by Democratic and Republican election officials. Our voter lists are as accurate as they ever have been before, and they're checked regularly.
Now let's fast forward to the folks who are actually doing the work and the distrust that MAGA has with them.
Why should we trust the people who are working the election?
I can tell you, I've been working with election officials for over a quarter of a century. And when you talk to these election officials out there, Republicans and Democrats, they don't do this because it makes them rich and famous. They do this because it's a calling.
A calling heard by George Harrison, Beverly Wojtyra, and Paul Petruska, trained poll workers near Atlanta.
Who I'm certain now will get death threats. God.
They told us when there's a problem, it's nearly always a mistake the voter made. And there's a saying at state headquarters, if you don't know how anything works, everything's a conspiracy.
Bingo.
Sometimes they just want to vent. Sometimes they just want to have somebody listen to their question and say, hey, I have this question, what about this? I try to have all my voters, by the time they leave, be in a better mood than when they came in.
Election doubters are welcome to volunteer, like 2 skeptical women who took the 4-hour training course recently.
And they just wanted to see for themselves, and they were both convinced by the time they left training that
Love this.
everything was on the up and up.
I would say to the voters that are watching this, stay off the internet. Listen to the people. Come down here and talk to us. Fact check with more than Facebook and TikTok. That's what I would want people to take away from this whole entire conversation, is that gossip kills.
Gossip isn't the only menace.
I really have a great day.
Many Georgia poll workers have a 911 panic button on a lanyard. Offices are armed with the antidote Narcan. Last year, fentanyl was mailed in an attack on election workers just doing their jobs.
The very definition of domestic terrorism, and by the way, that ain't folks on the left doing it.
They want to ensure that all eligible voters and only eligible voters can vote in a system that is accurate and breeds confidence.
but confidence remains under attack. This post last week claimed illegal Haitian immigrants are voting with Georgia driver's licenses. The FBI traced it to Russia. Election consultant David Becker told us there'll be more disinformation and a few breakdowns and mistakes, none of which should be confused with fraud. What should we expect in terms of results on election night?
So on election night, don't expect to know the winner. Definitely don't expect to know who controls the United States House of Representatives. There are a lot of very close races, even in places like California, that will take days or maybe even weeks to resolve. The Senate, we might know a little bit sooner, but unclear. We probably will have a pretty good idea who won the presidency maybe around Thursday or Friday.
But that's more than enough time for Donald Trump to do exactly what Steve Bannon said his goal was to do in 2020.
And what Trump's going to do is just declare victory, right? He's going to declare victory. But that doesn't mean he's the winner. He's just going to say he's the winner.
Back after this, The Ron Show on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn.
This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
So far this morning, we spent a lot of time focusing on MAGA and their acceptance of the truth and their inability to do that. I get it. The sheer volume of lies and disinformation and misinformation and left is right and water is dry and the sun is cool. It's taken root. It's taken root. And it's taken advantage of. You heard me in the last segment with the very words of Steve Bannon, who knew and who said Donald Trump knew that his base would accept absolute lies and that Donald Trump was going to use that to his advantage in the aftermath of the 2020 election. And you know he'll do it again later this week. Here's that audio again.
And what Trump's going to do is just declare victory, right? He's going to declare victory. But that doesn't mean he's the winner. He's just going to say he's the winner. The Democrats, more of our people vote early that count. Theirs voted mail. And so they're going to have a natural disadvantage, and Trump's going to take advantage of it. That's our strategy. He's going to declare himself a winner. So when you wake up Wednesday morning, it's going to be a firestorm. Also, if Trump is losing by 10 or 11 o'clock at night, it's going to be even crazier. Because he's going to sit right there and say they stole it.
Agree.
I'm directing the Attorney General to shut down all ballot places in all 50 states. It's going to be no. He's not going out easy. If Biden's winning, Trump is going to do some crazy shit.
Joining me to talk, maybe do a little prognosticate or not, Andrew Heaton, local Democratic strategist. Andrew, are you set? Have you got everything that you needed to have in-house in the pantry for whatever watch event you're going to be doing?
I am stocked and ready for however the night breaks. I'll be ready.
Yeah. I was pretty fascinated. I don't know if you watched 60 Minutes last night. I was pretty fascinated watching their hyper-focus on election integrity and the sort of, spin and disinformation that takes root and just, hits the road long before the truth puts its pants on, as we were told by a famous author. But it's pretty alarming. And the thing that gets me is like this weekend of, you can't do that. State law says you can. The judge says that's what the state law says. And the timeliness or the peculiarity of the state and now the Republican National Committee, the state GOP and the Republican National Committee targeting 7 blue counties in Georgia for daring to open their offices on the weekend to allow absentee ballots to be put in, but didn't want to include the red-leaning counties in the state that also did it. I mean, we're just headed to what feels like another one of these post-2020 scenarios, doesn't it?
Oh, unfortunately, I think so. And I think what we've seen in multiple instances, what they are doing is they are planting the seeds so that if for whatever reason, and the reason would be democracy and voting, if the night does not go their way, they have planted enough seeds that they can then go back and say, see, no, we told you, and now it's not breaking the way we said it was going to. No, it had to be because of fraud. It had to be. And the issue around the counties that opened up this weekend, and to be clear, just to reiterate for your listeners, it was fully legal. verified by Gabriel Sterling himself on Twitter. It was 100% legal for these counties to accept these ballots by hand. And that's the key, because the Republicans were harping on the part of the law that said you can't have drop boxes open the weekend. The key is they weren't taking them by drop box. They were having officials take them by hand. And then they said, well, you're not letting observers in. And for a moment, that was true. Fulton County specifically at first was saying, we're not going to let the observers in. But then Secretary of State came in and said, no, you have to let observers in. Fulton County relented. They said, okay, we got you. Observers can come in. So it was literally done by the book, by the law, with the Secretary of State's office, who, again, is run by Republicans, saying, yes, this is 100% legal. But that is core to their strategy post-Tuesday, is to be able to build evidence, quote-unquote evidence, that they can then point back to. And the biggest thing you see that I think is they've done a whole lot of early vote prognostication based on what we do know for a fact is that Republicans showed up early vote this time.
Oh, yeah.
Unlike the past couple cycles, Republicans did, they showed up. But what you're seeing is not just them saying, hey, it's great, we're getting out early voting, but, it's still going to be close. They're saying, oh, no, look at this early vote. We're the ones early voting. We've got the big lead. There's no way we can lose these states. And what they're going to do, and the playbook is so simplistic and childlike, it's almost insulting. They're planting the seeds so that then when they lose some of these states on Tuesday, which they assuredly will lose some of them that they're saying this in, they're going to point back and say, nope, there's no way we should have lost that state. Look at our early vote lead. There's no way we should have lost. And that is how they're going to then, it is so troubling. And it is at the very top. You got the main one I've seen doing this is not even Trump. It's essentially his running mate, Elon Musk, who has spent the last 3 weeks on Twitter pointing to every early vote result and saying, see, oh, look at this. There's no, look at this early vote in Pennsylvania. That's the one he's really been focused on. Look at this early vote in Pennsylvania. No way we can lose Pennsylvania. Look at this early vote. And it is like, you can see the road they're trying to build.
Well, and here's the thing. I try to explain this in a way that makes sense for anyone who is trying to make the math. If you went out and bought a 6-pack of cupcakes and you ate 3 on Saturday night and you ate 3 on Sunday afternoon, did you eat 6 cupcakes? It's still 6 cupcakes, whether they were eaten all in one sitting or over a 2-day period. The number of cupcakes are the number of cupcakes. What I'm saying is the Republican early vote, if it was going to show up on Election Day, would still be the same number of people. It doesn't matter that they may have early. The cannibalizing, I think, is the term that folks are using. Is okay, great. I'm happy that Republicans early voted. I mean, I tell anybody that's thinking about waiting until Election Day, well, you don't know what the weather's going to be like. You don't know what your work day is going to be like. You don't know what's going to come up that's going to preclude you from being able to vote. So why not do it when early voting is open and you've got the time, or you can make the time, and it's just that much easier. So great, early vote. That's what listen, I tell people on the left, we won that fight. We wanted more options than just strictly Election Day, because it made no sense for the person who has a job and kids, or multiple jobs and kids, or just multiple jobs and can't fit that in. We don't have a holiday where folks get paid to not work while they have the chance to go vote. So we won that fight. I'm happy that Republicans are taking advantage of it, because it shows that it was a good idea. It was our idea. It was a good idea.
Yeah. Oh, no, I have been saying this for weeks now. I have been thrilled, because there is a part of me, and as much as Republicans like to pretend Democrats don't love America, I love this country. I love democracy. I love our electoral process, and I love seeing anyone vote. Obviously, I have my own personal preference of how I'd like them to vote, but I understand that's not going to happen. But as long as you're voting, I'm thrilled. What I can't stand is you voting, but then you questioning if your candidate doesn't win. There must have been something afoot. And especially here in Georgia. I mean, my God, for 2 cycles now, the Republicans in between elections have passed numerous laws. Whatever your opinion of them, at this point, you cannot pretend that Republicans haven't done whatever they can to, quote, secure the ballot in Georgia. So to even question if your guy loses on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, that, oh, well, something must have been afoot. Well, how? How? You guys have passed about every law imaginable to secure it. How? And so, yes, I am thrilled Republicans early voted. But I worry that that common people, and I'm using that not pejoratively, but like folks who are not steeped in this, who do not live and breathe this, who only, like most folks, get their news casually. They might watch a few minutes on the nightly news. They look at social media. Unfortunately, social media is where so many people get their news now. And they get just enough information to be dangerous. They get just enough tidbits to be dangerous in how they think this is. And the early vote is the key, because what the Republicans need to understand, what they've done is they have come out, they've early vote, that's great, but they have really maxed out their vote in a lot of counties.
Yeah.
And so their election day turnout is going to look different.
Yep.
I mean, they've got counties that have already hit over 100% of their projected turnout. Like, so they're just not going to see the election day turnout they've historically seen. And I worry that they're going to use that to immediately say, oh, something must be off. This isn't how we vote on election day. It's like, yeah, because you all voted early. What do you want me to tell you?
I keep thinking of that meme where the kid's riding the bike and poking the stick in the wheel, the front wheel of the bike, and then of course, crashes and then complains that somebody else caused it. To me, that is the epitome of the MAGA voter right now. But nonetheless, well, we've all watched the polling. We've all seen how tight the numbers look at various levels. I was reading from Vantage Data House. They did a piece last week that kind of speaks to like their belief that there's a blowout coming. That the trend has been trending towards Harris for quite a while in the 6 battleground states. We saw the Ann Seltzer polling over the weekend from Ohio, which I don't know. Do you take it with a grain of salt, or do you go, yeah, maybe there's something there, maybe there's some there, and even if Iowa doesn't flip, does this translate to maybe some down ballot wins that Democrats aren't expecting? We've been, over competing what we see our numbers looking like for 2 years now. Does that continue Tuesday night? What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, so first off, no, I definitely don't take the Ann Seltzer poll with a grain of salt.
Right.
Like, she has too strong of a track record to dismiss it. As much as Republicans would like to dismiss it right now, you can't. She's just proven herself to be a pollster of integrity with a track record of real results. And yes, you can go back over a 20-year career like any pollster. Has she had some misses? Sure, but not many, not a ton. And here's the thing. So Trump won Iowa by 8, last time around. If he does win it, and yes, in a poll where she's up by 4, I think it was 3, 4.
3.
With a margin of error, which I believe is plus minus 6. Does that mean Trump could still win Iowa by 1 or 2?
Yep.
Sure. It absolutely, Trump very well could win Iowa, but here's his problem. You can't take a state that you won by 8 last time in an election you lost and then only win it by 1 or 2 and think you're doing well elsewhere in the country.
Right.
Like, that shows slippage. That shows that then in states where you were only up by 1 or 2 last time, or outright lost last time, there's a very real chance you're going to lose it again. And what we've seen, the reason why I don't think this is a fluke, and one thing that some folks have reported on this cycle, is that, much like many of the post-Dobbs elections and polling, pollsters, they have overcorrected for 2016 in terms of the Trump vote.
Right.
They are so terrified of having a repeat of 2016. I mean, Nate Silver, as much as I have a lot of issues with Nate Silver and the way he's conducted himself this cycle, he has even commented he sees a lot of hurting. He thinks a lot of pollsters are just out of fear of being wrong, are ensuring, it's a +1, +2, it's tied.
Yeah.
Which, to have that many in a row, I mean, yes, that could be true, but it does indicate maybe there's some hurting going on. But what they've all done in overcorrecting for the Trump vote, what we've seen post-Dobbs is they've consistently underestimated the woman vote and how women are voting post-Dobbs, and especially Republican suburban women who are looking around. And that's what Ann Seltzer specifically, when she talks about her Iowa poll, she's like, you do not understand, especially in a state like Iowa, which passed a draconian 6-week abortion bill. The reaction of women voters in that state is going to be something that pollsters are not properly accounting for and have not properly accounted for post-Dobbs. And you don't even have to go far back or go to some specific local special election. I mean, you can. We had a special election in North Alabama, last year that you can point to. But you don't even have to go that granular. Look at 22. 22 was supposed to be a red wave.
Yep.
Every poll said, oh, man, the red wave is – the Republicans were telling themselves, oh, we got our red wave coming. Man, how ginormous is our lead in the House going to be? We're just going to run riot. And, oh, never mind, we barely got a majority. And I think that right there, you just got to go back to 22 to see the possibility that, yes, all these polls for the last month or so showed, oh, man, it's going to be close. Trump might take the state, but they're so close, and they're so underestimating, especially when – and this is the problem looking at early votes, because, let's peel back the curtain a little bit for some of your listeners who maybe don't understand how this works. So what both parties and campaigns and everything do, they look at the early vote, and depending on how they score it, on the Democratic side, they have a scoring system where they score the likelihood of voters based on their voting history, how they're likely going to go into the booth this time.
Right.
And they assign scores, and they say, okay, well, based on what we've seen and based on the voters who've come out so far, this is the likelihood of what they vote. But what that can't factor in is, suburban Republican women who have traditionally voted Republican,
right,
but post-Dobbs are now saying, you know what? Yeah, enough is enough. I've stood what I can stand, and I can't stand no more. And that we've seen that consistently. And so as much as we can try to predict based on patterns what the early vote is telling us, it's really hard in this post-Dobbs world to really get a strong gauge on these, slightly center-right leaning, especially women, independent voters, how they're actually breaking. And what we've seen consistently is the issue of choice has been such a motivating factor. And again, that's what Ann Seltzer, when she's given this poll, she's saying, you all are underestimating just how much choice is motivating women voters right now.
Well, and also the you're good. The flood of folks who registered to vote after Kamala Harris became the nominee. I mean, those aren't showing up in any likely voter pools because they're not likely voters. They're brand newly registered voters, but they're not showing up in any polling data either. But they're gonna vote.
Oh, I mean, we here in Georgia, by the end of early voting, we were close to 20% of the voters, which is hundreds of thousands of voters, did not vote in 20. Now, that's not to say they've never voted, and I think that's one thing that sometimes gets a little bit misunderstood. Like, yes, a lot of them are brand new voters, especially because you look at the age breakdown. A strong contingent of them are 18 to 29, 18 to 39. But many of them are older voters, so it's very possible that a lot of these non-20 voters did vote in 16, 14, 12, But, no, a lot of them are brand new voters to the polls, and a lot of them are younger. They are more diverse. It is heavily woman vote. It is heavily people of color. And so, yeah, you are not playing with the same field you were playing with in the last election.
Yeah.
And that has got to be appreciated and better explained. And I think it's just, especially when you look at the demographics of those new voters, sure, we could be all wrong, but it looks like it's in the favor of the Democrats.
Well, and to that point, the GeorgiaVotes.com, end of early voting cycle data shows that 18 to 29-year-olds make up 54.5% of all non-2020 voters. And that non-2020 voter is Black, Hispanic, Asian, or other. Only 18.5% identified as white in that. Andrew Heaton, local Democratic Party strategist and campaign guru, joining the Ron Show back after this on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Final few minutes of today's Ron Show, and I am grateful to have a local Democratic Party strategist, Andrew Heaton, joining the show. Any surprises you expect on election night? Maybe I know you're working on some House races here in the state of Georgia, and I'm curious to see what sort of down ballot effect we see on Tuesday night. Might Democrats come closer to at least pulling even in the House or the state Senate?
Yeah, so I think we are definitely going to gain seats in the House. It's really hard for me to see a scenario, especially what we're seeing, especially this last week. We saw the surge we were all kind of hoping for in the metro counties finally kind of came in.
Yeah.
We saw a much larger turnout in Gwinnett, DeKalb, Clayton. Fulton had been doing pretty well, but then Fulton really burst out this last week. Cobb. And so that, and those are the counties where the majority of what I consider kind of our bubble flippable races are really at, especially kind of North Fulton and Gwinnett. We do have a couple of races down around the Nat line. We have a House race in Macon that I think is going to go towards the Democrats. We've got a House race over near Milledgeville. Our candidate Floyd Griffin is on track based on what we're seeing and based on best of evidence available. It looks like we've got a really good chance for Floyd to flip that seat. So and then here in core Atlanta, so just so you're, again, for your listeners' benefit, you have 180 seats in the Georgia House. 90 plus 1 is what you need for the majority. Democrats are currently only sitting at 78 seats. There's no scenario I see where Bryce Berry, our candidate, does not flip out Representative Misha Maynor.
Oh, for sure.
Misha Maynor, previously a Democrat, decided she wanted to go play for the other team. She's absolutely going to pay the price for that. Her campaign has tried to project a sense of calm and strength. They can project that until the cows come home. That district is an 80-plus Democratic district. Bryce Berry is going to win that seat. So you gain that seat. Again, I think we're very likely to flip Floyd Griffin down in Milledgeville is going to win that seat. Tangi Herring is our candidate down in Macon. She's very likely to win that seat. So then you're at 81 seats. And then you start looking at the northern suburb seats. Susie Greenberg is taking on Deb Silcox. Deb Silcox has been in this scenario before. For those that don't remember, in 2018, she lost her House race to Shay Roberts in a changing House. And then after redistricting in 2020, the Republicans basically redrew and gifted Deb Silcox her new district and said, here you go, come back to the House. And she did. But that district, her new district has continued to change like all the others. I think there's a very real shot that Susie Greenberg is going to beat Deb Silcox. So then you're at 82 seats. And then we've got two candidates, Michelle Kang in House District 99 in Gwinnett, Laura Bavartian, House District 48, North Fulton. I think there is a very, very realistic path for both of those candidates to flip those seats out. And then if we do, then you're at 84 seats. But even if we don't maybe flip both of them, still, I think there's a very real chance that the Democrats are going to start Tuesday morning with 78 seats in the House. And by Wednesday morning, we're going to be able to say we're going to have about anywhere between 82 to 84 seats. And that's important because we've seen on the Republicans' most controversial legislation, they actually don't have a lot of room, even with the majority they have. They don't have a lot of room for loss. They barely passed the school voucher bill with, I think, about 5 or 6 votes to spare. Even closer, going back in time, the heartbeat bill, they barely passed that, I think, with 1 vote in the House. So they can't afford a lot of slippage. And so if we can cut their margin down from 12 to only maybe 8, 6, then that forces the Republicans to have to start having more dialogue and more conversation and potentially negotiation with the Democrats when it comes to the legislative session. So it's really important, even if it's highly unlikely we take the majority this cycle. If we can cut the margins down, it's a brand new ball game in the House for the Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what Americans want. They want bipartisanship, so let's give them some of that. And to me, the breathtaking part about all that is we're doing that without eradicating gerrymandering. Imagine if we could.
Oh, that's the dream, Ron.
Yeah,
that's
I know.
Districts that aren't hand built by one party, but are actually just built to be competitive either way, just based on what makes sense geographically and community wise. Yeah, well, that's we can all dream, Ron.
Yeah, dare to dream, dare to dream. All right, Democratic strategist Andrew Heaton, thanks for joining the Ron Show today with giving us some of that progress. And by the way, what do you think happens at the end of the day when the presidential's shaken out?
I do think, based on everything we're seeing, it's obviously going to be very close, very thin, but I do think it is a win for the Harris-Walz ticket.
All right, from your lips to the actual results. I appreciate that. Thanks for joining the Ron Show today. Go take on the day, and good luck on Tuesday night with all your races as well.
Absolutely right.
For those of you listening on America One Radio and Progressive Voices via TuneIn, that's going to wrap up the show here in just a few minutes. I do have a bonus segment if you'd like to listen to the show via podcast or at ronshowatl.com. You can hear more about MAGAs being lied to, specifically about the economy and how much better it is. Here's a tiny tease from Bill Maher.
As The Economist puts it about America today, an economy with an unemployment rate of 4% and a per-person GDP of $85,000 does not have to be made great again. It is great.
The Economist, that liberal rag. Note sarcasm. That'll do it for today's Ron Show. Again, bonus content at ronshowatl.com, wherever you podcast. Back tomorrow, 9 to 10 a.m., 5 to 6 p.m. on America One Radio, and 11 p.m. to midnight, weeknights at Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Have a great day. We'll see you Tuesday.
Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
It is Election Day, and many of you who listen to the show via podcast, maybe you heard this as bonus content Monday night. I just kind of wanted, A, to get a jump on Tuesday morning because it's going to be a busy day. But B, I didn't want to end my podcast without continuing to harp on the misinformation, the disinformation, the outright lying that susceptible MAGA Republicans have been duped by for so long. I'm just going to continue the narrative. When are they going to get mad at the people doing the lying to them, the folks that are doing the misrepresenting? I don't know that it'll ever happen. They've been lied to since the advent of talk radio and the end of the fairness doctrine. They've been lied to since the advent of Fox News. They've been lied to since Frank Luntz and Newt Gingrich and Rush Limbaugh all came to a head in the 90s and learned how to wordsmith and to figure out how easy it is to dupe folks who are on their marionette strings, MAGA marionette strings, unfortunately. Listen, I've lived in the South all my life. I've been surrounded by conservatives. I have family members who are easily duped conservatives. It is what it is. And I know how hard it is to have conversations with these folks. They just shut down. They don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Okay. But you have to continue trying, right? You have to continue reasoning. I'd like to think that if my mother were still alive today, and by the way, her birthday was on the 1st of November. Love you, Mom. Miss you so much. That she was one of those folks that I could have those conversations with. My grandmother, her mother, who was a hardcore, rock-ribbed Reagan Republican, loved Bernie Sanders. Really wanted Bernie to win the Democratic nomination in 2016. Of course, that didn't happen, but my grandmother was going to vote for Bernie Sanders. There are folks who can be conversed to, who can be reasoned with, who you can point to the fact that they've been lied to for so long before they finally realize that light bulb comes on and they go, well, son of a bitch, these motherfuckers have been lying to me all this time. Yes, get mad at the right people, and then get active. I ended the Monday show, if you're listening on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn, with just a tiny hint of what Bill Maher led off with his new rule from last Friday night's show. And I'm going to give you that new rule in its entirety. It speaks to the economy and how the MAGA voter believes the economy is in tatters and just utterly in disarray. And I mean, you hear them talk. I mean, the Trump ads are like the upside down world. They tell you that, you know, left is right, that water is dry, that the sun is cool. And it's like nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, could the economy be better? I mean, sure, I suppose it could be. And actually, there's still a lot of inequality to deal with. But it's the right that fights the inequality, to keep the inequality in place. Again, Bernie Sanders never became the Democratic Party nominee. He would love to fight inequality. We'd love to see the minimum wage reflect modern inflationary measures. We would love to see, DEI initiatives that make sure that a woman gets paid comparable to her male counterpoint, that a black woman is able to bridge not only the gender gap, but the racial gap as well when it comes to equity in pay. Never mind opportunity, just the opportunity to be able to achieve by starting at the same starting line without obstacles in the way, the obstacles that the non-marginalized never sees before them, so they don't think they exist in other folks' lanes. I have this guy on Facebook. I don't even know how we know each other. I think we just have common former coworkers in the radio business. His name is Greg. Greg posted this, I think it's a meme, I guess, from October 21st, where this guy named Dan wrote in the big bold letters on Facebook, "I trust my grocery bill to tell me the truth about the economy, not the media," with 3 exclamation points. Here's the thing. There's actually a metric for that. The hours of work needed to purchase a week's worth of groceries. That's an actual metric. Happy to, and I guess I can put this in the show notes. It's the photos that are a hard thing. I'll put it in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. The hours of work needed to purchase a week's worth of groceries, by the way, is back at 2019 levels. That's right, back at 2019 levels. The best numbers that Donald Trump posted when it comes to the metric, hours of work needed to purchase a week's worth of groceries, the non-COVID numbers anyway, we're at the same numbers we're at today. And I don't like to be mean to people about this, but I will not hesitate to say that obviously that's factoring inflation. But wage growth has also occurred in the last 4 years. So if the grocery bill has taken a bigger bite out of your budget than it did in 2019, well, you're just not making as much. And whose fault is that? Who's ultimately responsible for how much you're making? It's not Joe Biden. It's not Kamala Harris. Because the metric, hours of work needed to purchase a week's worth of groceries, says the trip to the grocery store shouldn't be impacting you any worse than it did in 2019. Sorry. But what about gas prices? There's a metric for that too. Minutes of labor per gallon. The minutes of labor per gallon is back, well, here it is again, at 2019 levels. And that's even with the Russia-Ukraine war going on. I will give you that as well from econbrowser.com in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. So gas isn't, factoring for inflation, any more expensive for you than it was in 2019. So you can't complain about that anymore either, right? So at what point in time, again, do folks who are misled start to realize they're being misled about even the economy? Stupid. Well, Bill Maher, with his final new rule on Friday night's Real Time with Bill Maher, leapt right into that.
And finally, new rule. Well, here we are, the Friday before Election Day, and at least one of my predictions was right on the money. It's tied, as it always is. That's just who this country is now. Two tribes, united by a history, but maybe not a future. I'm sticking with my other prediction that Harris is going to win, but I can't say I'm not nervous that the election is in the hands of a small cohort of undecided voters, those curious few bisexuals of the political world. Oh, everybody loves to mock, but I see it as more of a personality thing. I call them the Christmas Eve shoppers of politics. They know the big day is coming, but they just can't get themselves to do anything about it until the last minute. So let me have a word with them. Hi, Christmas Eve voter. Look, you obviously don't like Trump, or you'd be in that camp already, but you're still torn. And I'm the guy who keeps saying, I get why. You wanted more reassurance that the Democrat isn't going to go along with every aggressively anti-common sense idea that comes out of the woke mind virus, which, yes, is a thing. And if she loses, that will be mainly why.
I kind of think Bill's kind of lost his way a little bit when it comes to this sort of thought. But anyway, I think the anti-trans attacks on the Harris campaign have had their effect. I've said as much.
And part of that mind virus is progressivephobia, Steven Pinker's term for the liberal fear of ever admitting when things are actually good. As The Economist puts it about America today, an economy with an unemployment rate of 4% and a per-person GDP of $85,000 does not have to be made great again. It is great.
Exactly that. And that's on Democrats for messaging too, I guess.
And yet, the economy is the Christmas Eve voters' other big issue, and they think it's terrible, when actually it's bigger and better than ever. Makes Arnold Palmer's dick look like nothing.
Thank God.
When we were coming out of the pandemic, every economist predicted we were headed for a recession and all the horrible things that come with it. But much like Trump's girlfriends, those things never came. The truth about America today, what Democrats should have been selling is everything that should be low and down is unemployment low, black unemployment low, poverty rate low, gas prices down, and everything that should be up and high is
wages,
manufacturing, real wages, the stock market, personal spending, personal savings, oil production. The U.S. now produces more energy than it uses.
I believe the term for that is energy independence.
Mississippi is America's poorest state, but its residents earn, on average, more than Canada, Germany, or England. If Trump was president with this economy, it would be 24/7 of we have the greatest economy ever in the history of the world, maybe the universe. Many people are saying it. But Trump isn't president now, so you get this.
Now you have millions and millions of dead people. And you have people dying financially because they can't buy bacon, they can't buy food, they can't buy groceries.
That's right. In this reality, if you don't get bacon, you'll die. Which is also what my dog thinks. But here on Earth One, it's not actually like that. The vast majority of Americans make it to the Piggly Wiggly and back alive. Yes, everything at the dollar store costs $1.50 now, but Biden didn't invent food costs money. And what caused the inflation was shutting the entire country down and paying everyone $6 trillion to stay home because a bad flu was going around. And Trump and Biden both did that. Everybody took the money, and I don't see anyone in this crowd handing back the checks. But who brought inflation down further and faster than any other country? The United States, bitches. It peaked here in 2022 and since has dropped like a rock to 2.4%. Biden tamed it without causing a recession, which is like catching a SpaceX rocket with your butt cheeks. The phrase I hear so much that makes me just want to unalive myself is, how's she going to help me? Like the president is your personal genie.
That's right, Greg. I told you. Grocery prices, yes, higher, but your wages should have kept pace. And if they didn't, that's not on Kamala or Joe. That's on you and or your boss, who you should talk to about that.
And it's a government, not an insurance company. I don't know if Kamala worked at McDonald's, but she's not Flo from Progressive. You think you're living in the Second Great Depression because you can't buy a full foot of sandwich for $5? Maybe you're not looking at the actual numbers. Maybe your hat's too tight. And undecideds, you should be voting Harris because of the economy. But undecideds don't get that message.
Firstly, because they don't listen to the Ron Show, because I've been saying this shit for a while.
Because Democrats can't make the words, "things aren't so bad," ever come out of their mouths, lest someone somewhere accuse them of not caring enough about people who are struggling. But even in a good economy, some segment of society will always struggle with money.
But I also think that the effects of the 2016 cycle are why Democrats are shy about saying things aren't so bad now. Because things were actually pretty good in 2016 as well, but a lot of folks were still kind of dealing with the fact that, again, wages hadn't kept pace, the minimum wage had lost pace, and they didn't want to hear that things are actually pretty good when the working class, the lower income working class in particular, still had battles to be fought on their behalf, and Democrats really weren't saying in 2016, there's more work to be done. And I'll say that's something that I think that the Harris presidential campaign has done pretty well. They've acknowledged that prices had gotten out of control, and they're looking to do things to keep that from happening again. You know, attacking price gouging at the federal level. Great idea. Why haven't we done this before? The corporatization of our society, our economy, makes it harder for competition to drive prices down because we let corporatization happen. We let deregulation happen. And so we only have Kroger, Albertsons, Publix, and Amazon and Walmart. That's really about it anymore. We don't have regional grocery chains like we used to. We don't have competitive grocery chains like we used to bring those prices down by saying, us as consumers, well, if it's too high here, I'm going there. All right, back to Bill wooing the undecided voter, the Christmas Eve voter, he calls them.
Dear Christmas Eve voter, I say to you, things aren't that bad, but they might get a hell of a lot worse under the rule of a mad king. Do I love everything about Kamala?
Obviously not.
No. Who told you you get to love everything? Do I wish she came up with a better reason to be president than I'm not Trump? Yeah, it would have been very helpful. But let's not forget, I'm not Trump is still a really great reason.
And as Bill mentioned, there is a track record she can run on where she worked at the left hand of a president who guided us out of a pandemic, avoided a recession, found the soft landing that the Fed was looking for. So home prices or the cost of borrowing money to buy a home, they're going to come down. She's looking to work with that as well with her first-time home buyer incentive. Inflation is back at pre-pandemic levels again. And if that's not good enough, look at her opponent who wants to put a tariff on all imported goods. That's going to come out of your pocketbook. Look at the mass deportation plan he has in place. Elon Musk literally confessed, and we're going to take a break and come back and talk about this Tuesday on The Ron Show. Elon Musk literally confessed that Trump's mass deportation plan is going to cause a cratering of the economy. Believe that man when he says this, because for once, he's telling the truth. You're listening to The Ron Show on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast.